Hey guys, Legends of History here. Just before we start today's episode, I just wanted to let you guys know that I've reworked the channel memberships into one single tier. This just makes it easier to keep track and makes it really cheap for you guys to join. By becoming a channel member, you now also gain access to the Discord, where I'm pretty active, and we can talk history, mythology, and share pictures of cats. So yeah, check the link in the comments and see you on Discord. Alright Cain, you're up. Again. There's a lot left unsaid about Cain's life after he is banished and made to wander the earth. Indeed, we know that Cain feared the great outdoors because he was scared that someone might have tried to kill him. We know that he managed to build a city somewhere east of Eden, and we know that he managed to find a wife to start a family with. But the reoccurring question that isn't answered in the Bible, and has gone on to plague many, is that if Adam, Eve and Cain were the only people mentioned as inhabiting the earth, then who was Cain so afraid of? Who did he build this city for? And who was the woman he is said to have married? The Bible offers virtually no details of this woman, and some readers are content to leave it as that. But for others, the allure of who this woman might have been is too great. Perhaps one of the reasons to understand Cain's wife is to satiate our own curiosity as to who would even marry him. By all means, Cain was unhinged. He murdered his own brother and was then subsequently marked by God, which would have the effect of reminding people that this was not a good person. And yet Cain still secures himself a wife. Was he somehow able to lie to her, hiding his past as he assumed the role of good husband? Or did the old adage that girls really do prefer a bad boy ring true here? You might ask, why the fascination with Cain's wife, when the wives of Seth, Enosh, Methuselah, or any number of men in the genealogy of Adam don't get a description either? And this might be explained away by remembering that Cain's wife wasn't just any wife, but technically the first wife in a world fallen from grace. The first wife outside of the paradise of Eden. Yet we know nothing about her according to the biblical account. Some traditions suggest that she was a daughter born to Adam and Eve, while others propose alternative theories about humans existing outside of Adam's genealogy and amongst the land of Nod. Perhaps humans created after Adam, which the Bible just didn't acknowledge. Today we'll be exploring the significance of Cain's wife in extra-biblical material, as well as diving into the narratives in other traditions that paint more of a complete picture of the woman who married Cain. Since the Bible does not specifically identify the name nor origin of Cain's wife, many commentators have come to one of the more plausible explanations within the confines of the biblical narrative, that this woman was his sister, his niece, or a great-niece. It's important to remember that whilst biblical art frames Cain and Abel in their 20s or 30s, we don't actually know how old they were when the infamous siblicide took place. Yet again, the Genesis account leaves another detail unanswered, and because we know these characters lived well into their 800s or 900s, Cain could have killed Abel hundreds of years after having known him. If this was the case, then we know that in these hundreds of years that transpired, Adam and Eve would have given birth to more children. One of their prime directives by God was to populate the earth after all. From these hundreds, maybe even thousands of children, who in turn had the time to age into fully grown adults, and perhaps even have children of their own, Cain would have more than a few options to fill the role of his wife. Indeed, this would be in fact his sister or his niece, depending on who the lucky lady was. Additionally, this might also serve to explain who Cain was so afraid of when he was banished by God, as well as who he might have been building this city for when he ventured into the land of Nod, perhaps these being other sinners whom he knew would defect from Adam as time went on. If this is to be believed, it gives us the idea that there were indeed a lot more people on the earth than the Genesis account specifies, and that in the 600, 700, or 800 years that Cain was alive for, many of these people were old enough to be fully grown adults. Why, it's not far-fetched to suggest, based on these numbers, that Adam and Eve probably had many great-great-grandchildren that simply were too numerous to mention in the Bible. In any case, with that explanation out of the way, this idea proposes that Cain's wife was either a daughter of Adam and Eve, his sister, or a granddaughter of Adam and Eve, his niece. But I hear you say, that's incest. And yes, by definition, you would be correct. However, there is a way to explain this within the context of the narrative that might make it less gross. You see, since Adam and Eve were the first and only humans upon the earth, when they did have children, their children had no choice but to intermarry. Now, you could say that you would just happily abstain, exile yourself, and go and help Cain build his city. But we are told that Adam and Eve were instructed by God to populate the earth, and that instruction appears to have applied to their immediate children as well. Now, I'm not saying that God was holding a gun to their heads telling them to breed with each other, but there is an implication here that filling the earth with people was the utmost priority, regardless of who was related to who. Put simply, the stigma of incest just probably wasn't that big of a deal to the first few generations of the earth. Secondly, there is some belief here that the genetic abnormalities associated with incest would not be present in the immediate children of Adam and Eve. The reason being is because Adam and Eve were designed perfectly by God, and so they had no genetic defects to pass on to their children. Going by this narrative, this would have been the way of things for the first few generations, with humanity's genetic brilliance gradually diminishing in perfection with every new generation that was iterated. With this in mind, the immediate and subsequent children of Adam and Eve were probably safe to intermarry during that time. One idea regarding the enigma that was Cain's wife was that she was an inhabitant of the land of Nod. Now, we know even less about Nod than we do about the woman in question, but we do know that this is where Cain found himself wandering to after he was banished. Once more, we cannot determine when Cain was banished, nor how old he was, so for all we know, this could have transpired during the latter years of his life, where the descendants of Adam were so numerous that not everyone knew each other, much less knew the people who had been born hundreds of years before them. With this idea, Cain's wife was one of these people, certainly someone younger, who'd been born years after the murder of his brother Abel, and perhaps years after Cain had been banished. Perhaps by this point in the timeline, the people who Cain feared would come after him for his siblicide may very well have forgotten about him, especially if other murders had transpired within that time frame. The Mark of Cain may have become something of an almost forgotten legend at that point, a ghost story, if you will, that the people of Nod either didn't remember or no longer believed was true. So it's plausible that Cain's wife could have been a woman who had no idea who he really was. Even if she lay eyes on the mark, it wouldn't be beyond Cain to brush this symbol off as some kind of birthmark or wound. And because his wife had no reason to suspect otherwise, it's unlikely she would have connected the dots that incriminated Cain as the very first murderer. A murder that by that point might have taken place hundreds of years prior. Furthermore, we know Cain is capable of murder. Who's to say he wasn't capable of lying? We saw him lie to God when he told him, "I am not my brother's keeper," when God had asked where Abel was. Who's to say he couldn't have lied to this woman about his distant past? Again, it's possible that this wife of his was on the younger side. She could have very well been in her 20s, whilst he was in his 400s for all we know. So there would have been several hundred generations in between them that would render them so far removed that they were basically strangers to each other. On the other hand, it might be said that Cain was honest with this woman about the crime he had committed, and that this woman had either accepted him, in spite of his transgression, or was enthralled by his evilness, because she was evil herself. Indeed, we do know that the land of Nod was outside the presence of the Lord, so it's reasonable to believe that if there were people who came to live here, they did so to get away from God, and probably to live a lifestyle that was not congruent with his instructions. Once more, we cannot be sure if they were evil, but it wouldn't come as a surprise to find a people here who weren't God-fearing, and who were less righteous than those who remained in the presence of Adam. It's fitting then, and perhaps somewhat romantic, that even someone like Cain finds someone that matches his own darkness, a woman who wasn't put off by his murderous nature and was perhaps even attracted to it. Whilst not specified in the Quran, which mostly follows the same rhetoric as the biblical account, an Islamic tradition, spawned from various hadiths, proposes that the children of Adam and Eve were born with an accompanying twin sister. In this case, Cain was born with a twin sister named Aklima, who would become Adam and Eve's first daughter, whilst Abel was born with a twin sister named Azura. Whilst this idea isn't traditionally canon in any of the major religions, it does allow for a neater explanation as to where Cain might have acquired a wife. In one of these non-canonical traditions, Adam instructed Cain to marry Abel's twin sister Azura, and for Abel to marry Cain's twin sister Aklima. However, Cain resented this arrangement and told Adam that they should let God decide by means of a sacrifice. Adam consented, and when Cain's sacrifice was rejected, it was taken to mean that God disapproved of Cain's marriage to his own twin Aklima, and that she was to be married to Abel, as Adam intended. So overcome by jealousy that Abel got to be with the woman he wanted, Cain killed Abel and then fled with Aklima to the land of Nod. This tradition is echoed in the Cave of Treasures, an apocryphal work written in Syriac sometime at the end of the 6th century, though with some slight modifications. In this narrative, Cain is born with a twin sister named Lebuda, whilst Abel is born with his twin sister Kelemath. In some traditions, the sisters' names are switched. As with the previous tradition, Adam and Eve decide that Cain should marry Abel's twin Kelemath, and Abel should marry Cain's twin Lebuda. When Cain protests that he wanted to marry his own twin Lebuda, Adam tells him that this would be a transgression, and that it was abnormal to marry the woman that he had once shared the womb with. According to Adam, Kelemath was better suited to Cain for this reason, but he nonetheless allowed Cain to take the matter to God for him to decide, and advised both him and Abel to make offerings to be sacrificed in order to determine God's intentions. Now, you might be wondering why Abel had to make an offering at all, seeing as he appeared to have been happy to obey his parents regardless. But it turns out that Abel may have had his own personal stake in this too. This account tells us that Lebuda was beautiful, but there is no mention of Kelemath sharing the same characteristics. It can be gathered, therefore, that Abel had fallen for Lebuda too, and so when the time came to settle who would have her, he was more than willing to take part in his offerings to God, going on to offer the best of his flock in an effort to win her. Another key difference in this account in the Cave of Treasures is that we see Satan enter into Cain on their way to make their offerings, whereby Satan persuades Cain to kill his brother and to take Lebuda for himself. When the offering doesn't go in Cain's favour and Abel gets to marry Lebuda, Cain is so overcome with rage and jealousy that he gives in to Satan and strikes Abel down with a blow from a stone of flint. After this, Cain receives his curse and becomes a fugitive and a wanderer for the rest of his days, where he is driven into exile toward the land of Nod. Still, there is a grim victory for Cain here, for he does take Lebuda with him into his banishment. Whether by force or by her own volition is left up to the reader's imagination. In a 6th century extra-canonical Christian work, found written in ancient Ethiopian Ge'ez, known as the conflict between Adam and Eve with Satan, we learn of yet another similar account where Satan again urges Cain to kill his brother and to take his twin sister for himself. In this account, the twin sister in question is not named Lebuda, but rather Luluwa, whilst Abel's less beautiful sister is left unnamed. Perhaps an intentional choice by the original author to demonstrate just how much she paled in comparison to her sister. Interestingly, we even see Satan acknowledge the difference between the sisters when corrupting Cain, as he tells him, "Adam and Eve love thy brother Abel more than they love thee, and wish to join him in marriage to thy beautiful sister, because they love him, but wish to join thee in marriage to his ill-favoured sister, because they hate thee." Like with the Cave of Treasures, the conflict between Adam and Eve with Satan wraps up this chapter with Cain killing Abel and being banished, though once more, not before taking his twin sister with him. The absence of details about Cain's wife in the traditional biblical text has fueled centuries of speculation, inspiring interpretations that range from theological theories to folkloric embellishments. While some believers find this mystery intriguing, most are content to leave it as an unanswered question, accepting that Genesis does not always provide exhaustive genealogical records. Yet for those who explore apocryphal texts like the Cave of Treasures and the Book of Adam and Eve, Cain's choice of his twin sister as a wife presents a compelling psychological insight into his character. Cain is frequently depicted as a figure of selfishness, pride, and defiance, and his decision to marry the person who closely resembled himself can be seen as an extension of these traits, an act of narcissism that mirrors his egotistical nature. If these renditions are to be believed, Cain's desire to be with someone who is, in essence, a reflection of himself is quite telling of his self-obsession and moral corruption. Whether one sees this as a meaningful interpretation or a mere legend, it still adds another layer to the complex legacy of Cain and the world he helped shape. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, then please leave a like, as this does trigger the algorithm into recommending more of my content. We're really close to 1 million subscribers now, so if you want to help push us over the edge, then do smack that subscribe button and consider becoming a channel member. Until next time.